I want to talk about Battlefield 5's view on history, how it's been rewritten for the game. You see, I don't think anybody who is an adult for 1 second believes any of the shite that's portrayed in Battlefield 5, but what about kids who haven't been educated on history? What about kids who've come through school where they haven't really talked about World War II? Are they going to think that this is true? I believe some of them will. And I think that when you use history, you should stick to history. I don't think you should bastardize history at all. You see, schools today are so messed up. They are brainwashing a lot of kids. I can't even discuss it on here because the subject is so bad to talk about that you will just be hounded out of society if you even dare come against it. So I'm not going to discuss that, but we all know what I'm talking about. But let's stick to World War II and Battlefield 5. Women played a huge role in World War II, a factual role that I don't think I've ever seen anybody acknowledge since Medal of Honor Allied Assault. And I'm not just talking about the resistance fighters, I'm talking about the home front as well. For example, when all the men were out fighting, where were the women? Were they sitting at home baking cakes? No, they weren't. They were in the factories making bombs, making bullets, building planes, building tanks, building jeeps. They were down some of the coal mines. They were on the shipyards building huge ships. That's where the women were. And the worst thing is, the Germans knew exactly where these ships were being built, where the munitions factories were, where the hangars were, and they were trying to destroy them, to cease our production of all this military hardware. So next time you don't fancy getting out of bed and going to work because it might be a bit cold and rainy, just think about these women who got up, went to work in a factory, knowing that pretty much twice a week bombers were coming over from Norway, Germany, bombing the shit out of these factories, the shipyards and everything. Sometimes there was no bombs fell on them, sometimes they did. Sometimes you survived, sometimes you died. That's real bravery right there. Then you've got the resistance fighters in Norway, France, Holland and many other places around Europe. Women who were spying, double agents, spying for Britain but pretending to be a spy for Germany. Some of them had infiltrated some of the highest ranks of the German army by being girlfriends to some soldiers. Some of them were found out and had their fingernails pulled out and were tortured and then executed. Hugely brave people that never get a mention. Because the only thing really that gets a mention in games is pick up a fucking gun and run around like a prick shooting everybody, because that's all they're interested in. And so if you were a woman who did a real proper job in World War II, then, you know, you're not going to get a mention, are you? Sorry, nursey, even though you were on the front line saving people's lives in the middle of combat, nah, sorry, you don't get a mention. Looking at Electronic Arts' Battlefield 5, it talks about the Special Boat Service, which was in 1940 formed as the Special Boat Squadron. And it wasn't formed by Billy Bridger. We know he's a fictitious character, but it wasn't even formed by anybody like Billy Bridger. Billy Bridger is a safe-cracking criminal scumbag who is recruited out of jail to help form the Special Boat Service. What a load of shit. The Special Boat Service was founded by Roger Courtney, and he founded it after trying numerous times to get the Royal Navy to do this project, and they wouldn't. He actually snuck upon the highest guarded British ship he could find, snuck into the captain's quarters, and wrote his name on the door. And the Admiralty was so impressed that he was able to do that one man could get past all this, that they actually started to listen to his proposal to build this crack group of commandos. And he recruited his first troops from the actual commandos, the Royal Marines, who were all trained up in the Cairngorms in Scotland, which was the SOE camp up there. The same camp, by the way, that Dave Sterling of the SAS, who founded the SAS, that's where he recruited his from as well. No cutthroating, robbing, murderous thieves there either. You know, why couldn't we do that? Why couldn't they be portrayed properly? Why did Electronic Arts choose, guys, to not take history and facts, which I thought was fantastic and would have made a much better story, sneaking onto a ship to impress the Admiralty. Why didn't they do that? No, they chose to make the white man a criminal in jail who was nothing more than a thieving cutthroat. That's what they chose to do, in the name of diversity, of course. But when you look at what they did with the Heroes of Telemark movie, kind of, in Norway, the hydroelectric plant, where Germans were creating hard water, sending it back to Berlin so that they could perfect the H-bomb. When you look at what Electronic Arts have done with that, then it's hardly surprising, is it? Because, you see, that raid there was done by the Norwegian resistance with help from the commandos, the Royal Marine Commandos. And there was only one woman actually went on that raid. Lots of men went on that raid. One woman accompanied them. And you know what her role was, guys? She was a highly trained nurse. And the men who went on that mission were trained by the Special Boat Service and the Special Air Service in the Cairngorms in Scotland. So they were a crack unit amongst themselves. They were not just farmers. They were a crack unit of commandos. They weren't 16-year-old women running around with their fucking mother, like Electronic Arts kind of hint at. Now, I know Electronic Arts know that their story's utter bullshit, but again I ask, why did you do it then? I'll tell you why. So you could tick the fucking box for feminism. That's why. And guess what? All those men that died who were in the Norwegian resistance, I'm sorry, you just weren't important enough. You weren't diverse enough. Your gender was just the wrong type, I'm afraid. So you don't get an include in Electronic Arts' Battlefield 5. You're just not important enough. And I find that disgusting, distasteful, and I can tell you now, guys, I can tell you now, if this was an all-women operation that took place in the war and somebody made a game and took out all the women and replaced them with white men, it would be on the fucking news, let alone a fucking little channel like mine. In fact, you know, the irony is the only actual pretty realistic story that follows historical facts is the third one about the Senegalese soldiers, the colonial soldiers who fought for France during World War II. That's about the only one. But even that, they have to have a go at the white person, because the story behind that is that the French white soldiers are unable to remove the Germans from this place. But then the Senegalese go in and they make sure they move them out the way, and they drive the Germans out. And then they actually remind the viewer by saying, hey, we have done what they could not do. We have defeated the Germans here. So, you know, it's like, let's just have a go. Yes, at any possible time you can. And I find the whole thing wrong. I'm fine about them representing the Senegalese. I think it's a huge disservice that the colonial fighters who volunteered, by the way, don't let any lefty tell you that we made these people fight for us is some form of slavery, because that didn't happen. We had, I think, 400,000 fighting for the British in World War II. Every single one of them was an absolute volunteer. We just asked them and they said, yes, we will help you. And, you know, we still hold the Commonwealth together because our empire was not as bad as it's painted out to be. It was in the early days, but towards the end it wasn't. We have great relations with India and many other countries that form part of the British Empire. We were not Satan's balls as we are made out by certain people in society. I want to end with just saying that I think that when you take actual events that happened in World War II, you should stick with the facts as far as you possibly can. Hidden and Dangerous managed to do it, no problem whatsoever. Enemy Front, which was released in 2014, also managed to do it. That was a game talking about the sabotage of the Wehrmacht heavy water plant. And during the mission, the player is led by a character called Leif Ronneberg. Now, that was a guy who was actually there. Well, actually, I don't think it was called Leif, but it was called Ronneberg. And I think Leif actually was the name of the group, because I think that was formed by a guy called Leif. I don't know my history too well on that, but I'm pretty sure that rings a bell of something like that. So they could do it, and Electronic Arts could have easily done it. They actually chose not to do it in the name of box-ticking diversity.